Welcome back, everybody, to Transit Tangents. My name's Chris.
And I'm Lewis.
And today we are on our second episode from our Salt Lake City series, where we had the absolute privilege to talk to a local about the Little Cottonwood Gondola project that is coming up.
Yeah, and I mean, this is like the first gondola episode, so Chris and I were very excited about this episode in general and talking about gondolas in general. But yeah, I think you might be surprised how this one goes. I don't know.
Are they good? Are they bad? Let's find out.
Yeah.
We did have the opportunity to talk to Julia, who is the executive director of the Salt Lake Climbers Alliance. The SLCA is one of the organizations who are actually on the opposition to the Little Cottonwood Gondola project. Doing research on this, we also found out there are quite a few organizations that are against this gondola project. And I have to say, I was a little heartbroken at first when I learned about this.
Yeah, because I mean, Chris and I are about as pro gondola as you can get in general. We're speaking generally still, but yeah, it was an interesting conversation, and it definitely opened my eyes to kind of another way of thinking about the solution.
Yeah, and to give a little bit of the background here, if you haven't watched the previous episode about Salt Lake City, please go back and watch that. We do talk about how the traffic gridlock getting in and out of these canyons is just absolutely horrendous, and the public transit options that exist today are sort of
not real.
Right. They're absolutely horrible. You sit on the bus for 2 hours, you get to take a nap. I guess that part's nice.
If you want to hear the full story, you can watch that episode.
It's all there. But a little overview of this project. To alleviate traffic, UDOT has worked with the ski resorts and supposedly with the community to come up with solutions to improve access to the canyon. And they agreed on this phased approach for improving that access. And it starts with trying to limit the amount of traffic that's going in and out of the canyon. It moves on to expanding the lanes in the canyon to include a bus going in either direction, like a dedicated bus lane. And then the third phase, which is the one that we are really getting into today, and that is most controversial, is an 8-mile long gondola that would start at the beginning of the canyon and work its way all the way up to service the Alta and Snowbird ski resorts.
Right. So it's a really interesting conversation. We're going to make sure that the links to all of the organizations that we talk about are going to be linked down below so that you can go and see for yourself some of the information that they're putting out, the plans, dig into the details on your own. But without further ado, let's just dive right into the conversation with Julia. So we're out here in Salt Lake City. Chris and I have had a fun couple days doing some skiing. Also, yesterday we did an entire day doing Salt Lake City in a day via public transit.
Got to see a lot of the city and walk a lot. We walked about 10 miles in addition to miles and miles of trains and buses.
Yes. So. But today we're very excited to be joined here by Julia. Julia is with the
Salt Lake Climbers Alliance.
Salt Lake Climbers Alliance. I should have had that one ready to go. Apologies.
No worries.
So thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us, first off. I guess to give folks an idea, why has the Climbers Alliance and you personally kind of gotten involved in the kind of campaign against the proposed gondola in Little Cottonwood Canyon, and just kind of a little bit more information about you and your organization?
Sure. Well, welcome to Salt Lake City.
Thank you. Yes.
Please come back in the summertime or spring or fall and climb with us, especially in lower Little Cottonwood Canyon.
Would love to.
Drove past all those beautiful walls, and so you have to come back.
It's both of our first times in Salt Lake City, really. So I would love to come back in the summer.
And there's all kinds of rock here, spanning from the granite that you drove past to, if you go to American Fork for the limestone, or Maple for the cobbles, or Uintas for, quartzite. So there's something for everything. So come back.
Yes.
Join us on the rock. But thanks for having me. My name's Julia Geisler. I'm the executive director of the Salt Lake Climbers Alliance, and that's the local climbing organization in and around the Wasatch Front and back. And it's an advocacy stewardship nonprofit. We mostly do, climbing access trail work, climbing infrastructure, bolt replacement. We have the nation's only professionally paid anchor maintenance crew here in Utah, replacing bolts. And so that's been our main, work, as well as maintaining access and trying to preserve climbing landscapes. We've been around since 2002 over some access issues in Storm Mountain Picnic Area and Big Cottonwood Canyon, which you drove past when you went to Brighton. And we've been around ever since. And we advocate for access and stewardship. And
Awesome. So the kind of, as you know, we're a transit-related podcast here. Both of us are climbers, and we can talk about climbing all day, honestly, and we do whenever we're not nerding out over like trains and whatever it may be. But the reason we really wanted to talk to you is currently there is a proposal for a gondola that would essentially take folks from the bottom of Little Cottonwood Canyon up to Snowbird and Alta ski resorts at the top. To give folks a little bit of a background, traffic is definitely an issue going through the canyon in the wintertime with skiers going up and down. It's fairly clear, you may or may not disagree with me on this, I don't know, it's okay either way, that the current situation really isn't sustainable and that something better could be done. There are some folks in state government and in, especially the ski resorts are also pushing for this. Some others as well who are pushing for a gondola for the solution. Lots of folks, yourself included, are advocating for other solutions. So I guess what for you are kind of the main sticking points for being against the gondola? What kind of would you like to see as an alternative instead?
Sure, that's a loaded question, and it has a deep past in the Wasatch. If you look back through transit issues between the Wasatch Front and back, this is not a new proposal or even a new problem. The Salt Lake Climbers Alliance is really active in Little Cottonwood Canyon because there is a beautiful climbing resource right at the base of Little Cottonwood, as well as all the way up the whole length of the canyon. So our interests are in preserving that incredible landscape that you see when you enter the canyon, and and finding a solution that works for transit that's not going to completely destroy that gorgeous landscape that's there. Because I think it's David Brower that you can advocate for a place 1,000 times, but once it's built upon, it's done. So we have one go at this. If you destroy it, it's gone.
Right. And it seems like that area at the base of the canyon that you're referring to is really cherished, especially by the outdoors communities here and the climbing communities. I saw on the website there were areas that were nominated for historical status as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, so climbing's existed here in the valley, in Little Cottonwood since the 60s, and Big Cottonwood even before that. So there's a deep climbing legacy here, and it is really awesome to be able to go out there and climb on climbs that were put up in the 60s and climb the same climbs today. So there's a living legacy in this zone. It's as you mentioned, there is a nomination for the lower part of the canyon, which we call the Alpenbach Loop, to be listed in the National Registry for Historic Places. And I think that would be the first climbing area that's actually listed. Camp 4 in Yosemite was nominated. And why that's important and special is because there is that legacy there that people don't know about. And without it being listed, you can't really get that into the hearts and minds of Utahns and making people aware that it's there. And it deserves to have some protection of the landscapes and that incredible resource that's there. So there's a deep legacy. And also, as you saw, it's minutes from Salt Lake City, a growing metropolis. Yeah, right. And so many people move here because of that quick access to recreation, not only ski resort access, but free public access, to the National Forest lands where that historic nomination is, in Little Cottonwood.
Right. From looking at it from afar initially, I see, as a transit nerd type person, that sounds like a really cool project to have a gondola at first glance without really looking at it. Having been here and speaking with all sorts of different folks, I definitely am not as, and I obviously did some research ahead of this, I'm not as pro gondola as I was. I still think it's not a clear cut this would be cool. It could clearly move more people up potentially, as cut and dry as it could be.
And I will say, hearing Lewis say that is actually a pretty big win for the anti-gondola movement.
For your case, based on what
he's very, very pro-gondola.
Yeah.
We were joking on the way up here that we had to address the big green gondola in the room because we have this running theme of the podcast, which is that we want gondolas in Austin, and it's just it's
kind
silly,
of an inside joke.
It's an inside joke, but it's a silly thing where there is this proposal a while back of doing these urban gondolas throughout the city because they were cheaper than trains and all this stuff. And so we actually made the logo of our podcast a little gondola. Now this was way before we decided to come here. So we wanted to get that out of the way. We have the big green gondola in the room, and we're very just pro public transit in general. But when we sat down and started talking about this project, one thing that we both admitted is you can't have, if you have public transit, it has to serve the community,
Right.
and it has to be community centric, community focused. The community has to have the buy-in, and it doesn't sound like there's a lot of community buy-in, especially at the base of the canyon for this particular project.
Right.
And we've talked to a couple people around town about it. I have a friend here who is more on the pro gondola side, but just because he hates sitting in traffic. But one of his big gripes was the taxpayer side of it. He doesn't want the taxpayer to pay for it. The ski resort should pay for it.
Well, I think you said it yourself. You don't want to sit in traffic, but if you have a gondola pumping more people up, and you also have the red snake because you can drive your car to still go skiing,
Right.
do you want to sit in a longer lift line?
Totally. Right.
So what's the end game here? So
Yep.
Is it really going to alleviate traffic? I don't see how that can be if you can still drive your car to go to the ski resort, because you said it yourself.
Yeah.
Some people want to get to the resort and just go skiing, and they think their car is going to be the fastest, and they will pay whatever it takes to sit in that car
Right.
and have all their stuff with them. And then you start to go down the rabbit hole of what this actually would look like to get your family to go skiing, and especially if you live on the Wasatch Back. So to back up, this is not a one canyon problem.
Totally.
This is a
We
regional.
experienced it in the other
Yeah, we
canyon.
did.
We experienced it in Bad
Exactly.
Cottonwood too. Yeah.
This is a regional issue that we have with transit as Salt Lake City's exploded. Not only Salt Lake City, but Park City is gridlocked with traffic, probably even more year-round than Little Cottonwood is. So, if you're going to do a transit solution, it has to work regionally, and it has to connect people's places where they live with where they recreate.
Totally.
And there is a carrying capacity. There's a carrying capacity for any natural resource. And, those resorts are at the top of the Forest Service, and surrounded by Forest Service property. And I think that's glossed over a lot, that people think that the gondola is just going to go on a UDOT right away, like over a road, but it's actually going through National Forest Service land. It's going through private parcels, like a 140-acre lease that we have with the LDS Church for a climbing property in Lower Canyon. It would go through there, and what's happening with that property? Is it going to be eminent domain to put these huge towers on? So it would set a precedent for UDOT, who does not do gondolas; they do roads. And let's be frank, in Utah, the road construction sucks. Like, you're sitting in orange barrels. It's unsafe and it's constant. And so do you want to turn that gorgeous canyon into a UDOT road construction project?
Right.
That is now going into the national forest. And there is a Forest Service decision that hasn't been made on this issue yet, and that is not really talked about either. So
yeah, I'm curious on we've seen UDOT has talked about this a little bit, as well as a couple of the different organizations kind of fighting this as well, talking about like enhanced bus services and bus lanes and things like that. I actually think that could go a long way in doing it if the right steps were taken to kind of do it.
But then you're talking about adding a bus lane and more disruption to the canyon, right?
Right, which I'm curious, like, with the enhanced bus service that they're talking about. I've seen some of them where they talk about bus lanes, some of them talks about enhanced bus services. Do you know any more about like what those services could look like? Obviously, it's fairly vague when we look at some of it from afar, but I'm curious.
So we're really excited that the advocacy work that I think that the general public, because the general public is not in support of it. If you look at statistics from Maine newspapers to, elected mayors and officials, the public is not in support.
Yeah. Even anecdotally from our short trip, most people that we talked to were not.
They don't think it's going to solve the problem of the traffic. So, but to answer your question, we're really excited that the advocacy work did at least present some phased approaches to this whole problem. It did not present metrics that we can achieve in order for that phased approach to be shown to work or not, which is unfortunate. And to your point of, are there other ways to quote unquote fix this traffic problem? Well, if you think about a golf course and you think about how many people are able to use that golf course in a day, and there's only so many people they allow to have a tee time and drive the cart around and use that golf course, and there's a carrying capacity. And the resorts, in capitalist society, we're unable to set that capacity, but it is there. And I think
they're going to try to shove as many people in as they can, and that's how capitalism is going to capitalism.
And meanwhile, it's becoming terrifying on the ski resorts with people flying past that it becomes marginally unsafe. But that is not the issue at hand. The issue at hand is that you have a beautiful canyon and a natural landscape, and we should do everything we can to protect it. And we have larger issues on our plate with the Great Salt Lake that we need to put our focus on, as opposed to another tourism attraction to canyons that already have plenty of tourism. So the solutions being, that national parks use, timed entry,
Right, especially we've seen like Yosemite in the last couple of years is like all reservations, timed entry, and it's like, it's one of those things that is, it can be less convenient for folks, but if it means protecting a like very unique, like kind of sacred place, you know what I mean? And depending on how you're looking at things, a little inconvenience, sorry, but like if you want to protect these resources, somebody's got to do something, because to your point, you can't just keep shoving more people into it and expect it to stay the same.
And it's inconvenient, but it's also a matter of you just have to plan ahead. I mean, we run into this issue. We climb it around Thanksgiving in Red Rock Canyon outside of Vegas, and they do a very similar style of timed entry, and that's BLM land, so it's a little different. But you just have to plan ahead if you want to do these trips. And I don't think that's a lot to ask of people. You said something earlier that I really liked, which was connecting people from where they live to where they recreate. And I think that's an important part of the conversation too, because as we're saying, the canyon's not just for tourists getting to the ski resorts. There are so many locals who need to use the canyon for the backcountry skiing, that are trying to get there for climbing, that are trying to get there for hiking, bird watching, whatever the recreational activity is. And this project really only serves, two private companies in the mountains. One thing that we saw on the website that I thought was interesting was the proposal for the toll rate, or variable toll rate, on the road to try to reduce the amount of traffic. I'm curious about your thoughts on that method of controlling traffic, when I think a lot of the advocacy groups are also trying to make sure that access to these areas is as easy and free-flowing as possible, especially for people who come from disenfranchised communities. Those two ideas seem incongruent to me, the tolling and then trying to protect it for the disenfranchised community. So I'm just curious, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a very complicated issue, as you're pointing out. I don't know if you know, Little Cottonwood sees 2.1 million visitors a year, which is more than all of the mighty 5 national parks combined.
Wow, I did not know that.
I didn't know that either.
So I think, we have
That's nuts.
we have a lot of people that want to go there, but then you also have a lot of people that want to go to Big Cottonwood and Park City. So, towns like Estes Park and Rocky Mountain National Park, during COVID, they put in place the timed entry because their entire town was gridlocked with traffic. If you go up and you talk to them, it's working, that their town is moving. People are spending more money at the coffee shop because they know they can't get into the park until 10. It's better for the economy, and it's better for the resource. So at a certain point, you do have a carrying capacity. I think people think that the gondola will help with things like you just saw with Interlodge, and you can't run the gondola during avalanche mitigation work. And I think as the climate crisis increases and we have these huge shifts in weather that are pretty massive events for storms, it's going to be even more gnarly getting people in and out of that canyon. So do you want to really pump more people up there?
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was looking at, I think it was the University of Utah paper this morning, actually, that was talking about avalanche risk in that road. I think is it 210, Utah 210? Is one of the highest in the country for avalanche danger, especially when there's not enough mitigation work going. But that is a good point. The gondola can't run during mitigation. It can run during cleanup, but not mitigation. But yeah, that's absolutely a good point. There will be times where the gondola has to shut down. It's not going to always be running and always be the perfect solution. I totally understand
and in the case of this weekend, I mean, those people probably still would have been stuck up there the whole time, because I was just this morning seeing some of the videos that they're posting, the avalanche crews were posting, and some serious avalanches going on throughout the entire last couple of days.
Yeah, and background of that for those who are listening or watching, we had skied in Snowbird over the weekend. The following day, we didn't go to Snowbird because of the weather and avalanche potential, and the road wasn't going to open. But there were people who were stranded at Snowbird and Alta. So when you mentioned Interlodge and these issues and the avalanche, that's sort of what we're talking about. Is
like folks actually being stuck.
There are people who get stuck because the road can't be opened, and those people may still be stuck even if there is a gondola because of the avalanche mitigation. So it's a good.
Think about the climbing resource. To come back to that and the impacts of the climbing resource. I think this really is one of the largest access issues we've ever had on our plates here in Salt Lake, because not only once the gondola is built is it a blight on the landscape, and you think about gondola towers constantly moving through that landscape. They're lit up at night for air traffic control. This is a dark canyon usually. But if you're on a very tenuous slab in lower Little Cottonwood and there's constant moving cars and the buzz of that gondola moving past you, it really impacts your experience. And I think that's one place where UDOT really failed to recognize that view shed is really important to climbers. Like, you're out there because you're in that landscape, and that's really distracting to have that connection to nature within minutes of the city. And to take that away from the general population, not just climbers, but hikers and people just wanting to experience public land, is pretty sad. So there's been talk of, why does everybody have off on a Saturday? Why doesn't your company give people off on a Friday? And then you don't have everybody trying to access the resort on a Saturday.
Right.
But since COVID, it seems like nobody works during the week anymore, or they're working
they work
remotely.
during the week. Yeah,
So-
they're like, I just need to send a couple of emails from the church.
So everybody wants to go at once. But back to your Red Rocks scenario there, and I climb in Red Rocks too. And if you have a reservation, when you can go, you're going to have a parking spot, and you probably have some sense of like, my route that you want to get on is at least maybe doesn't have a line of 30 people deep, so you might actually have that experience. And there is a finite number of people that can be in any one area and recreate or do other things.
Yeah, agreed.
Totally. I'm curious, are you basically just for timed entry, restricting the amount of cars that can go up, and kind of rather than doing any widening to make a bus lane or anything like that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, sure. Parts of the canyon already have been widened for the bus, but I think there is so much low-hanging fruit that really has not been tried, and in a concerted effort, things like two-way traffic going up, timed entry. Not everybody has to go skiing at 9 o'clock to two ski resorts. Timed entry going down. Reservation systems for parking seem to be working. And then, you add the electric bus. You add to answer your
questions. Some of those things can be
questions.
free to test even. You're
Exactly.
close to free.
Or the resorts can pay to get their customers to where they want them to go.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, my dad managed a ski resort for 40 years back east, and he said at the beginning, he said, the resorts can control their tickets. They can control the flow of people coming and when they come. So if there is a concerted effort there, I think you'll see a real change. And again, it's not just one canyon that has traffic. It is a regional transit issue that needs to be figured out. And I would say people needing to get to work to and from and across this valley is more of a concern than it is to get people to recreate 30 minutes faster to get on the hill to stand in a longer lift line.
Agree with that.
I mean, at this point, I think I'm fairly convinced that like I'm my opinion, I'm easily swayable. Like in general, like if like somebody tells me that like, explains that their position is definitely better, like I think I'm no longer like even for this gondola at all. I'm serious. Again, my opinion doesn't matter. I don't live here, but like having talked to some different people about it, and now like hearing your perspective on it too. Like for a little bit, I was kind of the two people who gave me a ride up into Big Cottonwood Canyon the other day. They were like, I could maybe be for it in a situation where the ski resorts are paying the full cost of this, because like to them, one of the sticking points was if Utah taxpayers are going to pay for this, and then Utah residents are still going to need to pay to use this gondola. Meanwhile, like, it's mostly for tourists from out of town who are wealthy and have money who can afford to go skiing for the most part. Like that didn't sit right with them. But if the funding mechanism changed, maybe that could be it. And that's not gonna happen in my opinion. But like a reservation system, timed entry, something like there feels like there's so many other ways you could do this.
And
I don't know.
I think we also have to take a step back, as again, we're visitors to the area. We are the tourists. We're part of we are the problem.
And again, our opinion doesn't matter on this really.
It doesn't, yeah. But we also take a step back and what all tourists should do, we need to really respect the local communities as well. And I think that's a huge part of it. And the resorts have to respect the local community too. And if the local community is saying, look, this is our canyon, our resource, and we believe this is the capacity, again, you have to respect it. And ski resorts can do what they can to try to move more people in a way that doesn't alter the canyon or alter the transportation system. I think that's fine. But I think it really all comes back down to respecting the local community.
Yeah.
And if we have the ability to preserve a beautiful landscape, that is, why a lot of us move here, then we should do everything we can to protect that, because it can't speak for itself. So let's try to preserve that landscape. And there are more important things to focus on, like the Great Salt Lake, for sure, saving the Great Salt Lake. I mean, who knows if we're going to have snow in 50 years? So let's not be short-sighted with what we do to our natural landscapes. It's also a watershed issue. The amount of soils that would be disrupted from this huge project. These towers are as tall as a Cliff Lodge in places. They are massive. They're not your normal looking gondola tower at a ski resort. They're the base of them is very massive. They have concrete posts. It cuts into the very narrow canyon, and the base of those slopes would be unstabilized. We already have a lot of mudslides and rockfall happening in the canyon, so we really need to keep as much vegetation and natural scapes as we can intact.
Totally.
And I was reading on the watershed issue as well, and I didn't see a map of it, but they alluded to a couple Superfund sites from old mining operations, I believe, in the canyon, and the idea of disrupting those Superfund sites and having pollutants go into the watershed was a big concern. I think it was Friends of Little Cottonwood Canyon that brought up the point that the water filtration system in the canyon is not as robust as most water filtration systems because of the purity of the water, and that they would have to also invest in massive improvements to the water filtering infrastructure just before any project got off the ground.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It is the drinking water for Salt Lake City, and there are 3 lawsuits, one being Salt Lake City because of the watershed issue. And I would come back to this is you are taking a gondola through Forest Service property, and do you want to set that precedent across the nation? there are other canyons that this could go into. American Fork Canyon, it would be another option, taking people from Provo up to Snowbird's terrain up there. So are you going to open that door to allowing this to happen in other natural landscapes?
I would say, even though like again, I'm not definitely you've swayed me, but I think it's also not an excuse to do nothing, and there needs to be a lot of pressure put on the resorts and UDOT. And unfortunately, I don't know if it seems like there is actually I'm excited to be able to say this. I think there's some money in Big Gondola right now. The gondola lobby is I'm serious. It seems like there are some politicians very tied up into this. I love that I was able to mention Big Gondola. That was
I'm gonna use that.
Yeah. Feel free to use it. I don't even need the credit. You got it. Big Gondola. The political will to be able to test out timed entry, to be able to test out variable tolling, you know what I mean? Try out some of these different things. Try out ways to improve the bus service, because frankly, the bus service as it is not. It's there is a schedule. It's not real.
Sounds like capacity limits and timed entry, because if you don't solve the car problem, you're never going to improve the bus problem.
And if you don't solve your carrying capacity problem based on what the natural landscape can hold,
Right.
as well as the user experience, how many people do you want to be on the hill with?
Yeah.
And skiing only exists 3-4 months out of the year, as opposed to other.
Right. Your experience is worse when you're just standing in line. Everything gets skied out faster.
So go to Colorado.
Yeah. Our trip here was terrible.
Utah's full.
Go back to Colorado.
I want to give you an opportunity if there's anything that you wanted to mention that you haven't, and if not, just where folks can learn more about the organization you're representing, or any of the other ones. Feel free to.
Yeah, thanks. So saltlakeClimbersAlliance.org is our website, and we try to keep this issue up to date. We will continue to fight for that natural landscape of Little Cottonwood, as well as the rest of the other climbing areas around here. And I think even if you don't live in Utah, this really is a national issue, because it will set a national precedent for UDOT to be able to have this kind of transit. I don't even know what to call it. It's not a solution, because it's not going to fix the transit problem, but to have this go through other forest, public, BLM, whatever lands across the nation. So keep tuned into this.
Yeah.
If you like to recreate.
Yeah.
I just want to say to Big Gondola, if you don't win in the canyon, come to Austin and build a gondola
Yes,
there.
yeah. We're
fine with
begging
that.
you for a gondola.
Well, again, thank you so much to Julia for taking the time to talk to us. That was not. I wasn't planning on necessarily going into that interview being just totally convinced that the gondola was a bad idea.
You changed position within a couple hours. We were having breakfast and talking about this, and you were very no, the gondola's good. And then we got into the conversation, and there was a sudden flip, which was actually really fun to watch.
That reaction that I was giving, I think Chris, I probably surprised you in the moment. We literally an hour before or 2 hours before, I was these are the points that I'm gonna really hammer again. And I did make some of the points still. One thing actually that I didn't talk about was the safety of driving up the road in the snow, regardless of if there's a gondola or not, is still a downside to the existing one. But listening to Julia talk about the fact that like, and I use this when I talk to my like kind of outdoor friends. I have a background in like the outdoor industry. That's like what I used to do. I ran a small business doing that in New Hampshire. Lots of friends who work in the ski industry, but also in the outdoor industry as a whole. And like loving places to death is a real thing.
Yeah.
And just trying to shove more people up this canyon into these ski resorts that are no doubt less fun when you're just like standing in line all day is loving places to death. In the last episode, we lightly mentioned like national parks are going through the same thing. Like, sure, do you want to get more people into the national park and widen the road in the national park and all this stuff? But then you get to a point where it's like, wow, this national park looks like a national parking lot at this point because there are so many. I didn't even off the cuff.
Good.
So many people trying to get up there, and listening to Julia talk about Little Cottonwood Canyon and the way that she was, and how important it is for all of these, hikers and climbers and all these folks, and doing all of this work to the canyon to change it, where really the only people who benefit from this are these two privately owned ski resorts, so that essentially a bunch of, for the most part, out of town wealthier people can go, access them in the winter. The compellingness of my initial argument just kind of like goes out the window. So
I think our big takeaway from this is we love public transit solutions. We obviously are hugely pro gondola, love that. But transit has to serve the community that it exists in. And if the community doesn't see value in that transit system, or they feel like it's going to further harm their community, organizations like UDOT and other state agencies need to listen to those communities.
Right.
So gondolas are great, but they're not for everybody.
Right. And I mean, again, it's like there are still like in some of the proposed solutions that Julia had, transit can still play a role in that. Like buses should still play a role, but if you have timed entry, if you have a toll for cars at the bottom that costs a decent amount of money, you're going to be loosening up the amount of traffic there, making the existing transit, being a bus, a much better solution. So I really enjoyed that conversation with Julia. It was like one that I wasn't expecting to go the way that it did, but like I'm totally open to being convinced that my opinion is the wrong one, and it's not often the wrong one. But
it takes a very big person to say that. If more of us could admit that, not me, but if more of us could admit that.
Yes, yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for watching these first 2 episodes from Salt Lake City. We do have one more coming up. I'm unsure as we're releasing this right now if it's going to be the next one or maybe the one after that. But if you're not subscribed and you want to see the 3rd and final episode from our Salt Lake City trip, this last one's going to be focused on just how to see Salt Lake City in a day using only public transit. We got to ride both of the different train systems, the Trax and the Front Runner. We got on several buses as well, and really like crisscrossed the heck out of Salt Lake City. We also met up with an old crisscrossed. Wow. We met up with one of Chris's old friends for a good chunk of the day. You get to see Chris schmooze a security guard at the Utah Capitol who let us in after they closed. It was a fun day in general. I was exhausted at the end.
It was great. So stay tuned for that. Also, huge thank you to everyone who did contribute to this episode. Julia, the Salt Lake Climbers Alliance. Also to all the organizations that we maybe haven't talked to, but have put all of the information out there and have very clearly made their points in opposition and to this project. Again, all of that will be linked, so please go and take a look, and you can choose whether or not to support these organizations. But with that, make sure that you are, if you're enjoying the podcast, that you are liking on YouTube, subscribing. If you are listening to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever, also make sure that you are giving us a rating, preferably in the 5-star range.
That would be fantastic.
I'll accept a 4, but preferably in the 5.
4 is unacceptable. You can also set up like auto downloads and stuff like that. If you want to make sure that, our podcast gets delivered to your phone, go ahead and set up that auto downloading. It's a good way to do it so you don't forget.
And make sure that you're sharing it with your friends on social media. You can go to our website, transittangents.com. We have Instagram, TikTok. We're everywhere. So
the app formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah, we don't talk about that one, but we are everywhere.
I use that one a lot, though. Yeah.
So get out there, share our content. We would absolutely love to see it. Give us comments, talk to us. If you want us to come do a story in your city, like how to see your city in a day, give us some choices to choose from.
Maybe we'll come and you can show us around.
Yeah.
But awesome. Thank you all so much for watching.
Yeah, I'm saving that dough. Public transit's where it's at. Watch me go.
And I guess if you want to go ride a gondola, go ride the tram at Snowbird. And
Yeah.